Today's lecture will be a continuation of the MALS 202 syllabus. We have already done in this paper. We have already done an introduction to Victorian age, the social, political, economic backgrounds, the forces and influences that form the basic ideas of the Victorian age, and then we have moved into the novels. We have done a picture of Dorian Gray. We have done Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. We have started Wuthering Heights in the live class that we have. Then we have moved to the non-fiction area of the syllabus. Now we also have to do Jane Austen's Northanger Abbey when it comes to novels, but I thought that I'll probably mix and match so that you won't feel bored doing it. So we had done John Stuart Mill's, The Subjection of Woman, and we have done Matthew Arnold's Culture and Anarchy. Now we are going to move to another new unit, which is the fourth unit in your syllabus, which is the unit on poetry. Now again, I just want to mix and match things so that you do not get bored and tired of doing the same types of things over and over again. It's quite a lengthy syllabus, so I understand that monotony might set in. So we are going to start with our first poem, which is Childe Roland to the Dark Tower Came. Now this video lecture will be a short one, just an introduction to Robert Browning, his ideals, and an introduction to Childe Roland to the Dark Tower Came. Robert Browning is a very interesting and a very popular and a very famous name when it comes to British poetry, because of not just the poems that he wrote or the subject matter of those poems, but because of his experimentation with form. Now that becomes very important. When we speak of Robert Browning, experimentation with form becomes absolutely essential, because Browning does something which does something new and gets quite popular in doing this. And apart from this, Browning is considered to be a sage poet. So he's not just a poet, he's also a philosopher. So he's writing poems which is not just a description of beauty, or he's writing them out of pleasure, or he's writing terse literary pieces, but he's writing his poetry where his poetry has a very well-defined plot structure and a story binding it. But there is also certain philosophies that he wants to propound through those stories, which make his poems even more interesting, because they are philosophical poems, but they are not tersely philosophical poems where he's just speaking of philosophies. He is speaking of the philosophies through stories. So he's telling of philosophies through stories. And another thing that is very important when we come to Robert Browning is, as I told you, is his work with form. Robert Browning was an English poet and playwright whose mastery of the dramatic monologue made him one of the foremost Victorian poets. Now, we need to know what a dramatic monologue is, because dramatic monologue is a word that goes hand in hand with Robert Browning. And to understand Robert Browning, we must understand the form of dramatic monologue. We are going to go into it in the next slide, but some few characteristic features of his poems are irony and a dark humor, social commentary, social settings, challenging vocabulary and syntax. The most important words here are irony, characterization, dark humor, social commentary, and in case of this poem, a historical setting. And in case of many other poems. See, Browning picks out his storylines or sets his poems in almost like historical fairy tale contexts. So he's setting his poems in medieval Italy, he's setting his poems in medieval Rome, in a fantasy land, a medieval England of fantasy lands where there are sorcerers and witches and magicians, elves, so on and so forth. So setting becomes very important. And what is he doing via these these poems that he's putting in these settings. He's trying to create a social commentary. So the creation of the sorcerers, the creation of the knights in the shining armor, creation of villains, creation of support characters, creation of a lord, creation of a lady. So everything is bound by a thread of social commentary. So while doing this, these are not just visual characters that he's creating just so that he wants to create a story, but he's also trying to express something through these characters. Other two most important things, and things which are which will come time and again as we do this particular poem, is irony, characterization, and dark humor. Irony and dark humor, especially. Again, I may call this poem a very Byronic poem in that this poem does not reflect on the ideals of heroism or chivalry or knighthood in the commonly romantic England accepted ways, where the knight in the shining armor is the uh, where the knight in the shining armor is the beyond and end all of all. He's honest, he's brave, he has no misgivings, he's a model human being, he's an inspiration and a model human being. That is not the case here. So Browning's knights have a lot of misgivings, have a lot of faults, they have a lot of weaknesses, which romantic knights in shining armors did not have. They were weakless characters, they had no weaknesses. And so the sense of irony and dark humor becomes very important here, because he's projecting these in a very ironic sense. So there's a dark, so there's a knight, but this knight is not a knight in charming armor throughout. The knight has weaknesses and loses at a point of time. And then dark humor is something which is again will come time and again with reference to this particular poem, Childe Roland to the Dark Tower came. It is humor, but it is a very kind of sarcastic, poignant form of humor. So it's not a humor that you could laugh at, but it is a kind of humor that is going to lead you to an epiphany, lead you to more and more thoughts, more and more questions.